Welcome to Hannah's Inner Healing channel or forum. In this channel, we focus on inner healing, mental health, and also we focus on things that happen into people's childhood. We try and help people heal from that and be able to overcome such issues. Again, my name is Hannah. I have a background in Masters of Divinity in Pastoral Studies. I also have a degree in Sociology and Politics, and I also have a certificate in Trauma Counseling. Welcome. Today we are going to be discussing trauma. That word has been used so much in society right now. Many people are saying they are traumatized, or this happened to me and I was traumatized. So what is trauma? Trauma, in a simple sense, is a deeply disturbing or distressing event. Deeply disturbing or distressing event that happened to an individual. So trauma occurs when someone has been something happened and it deeply distresses you as a person, or disturbs you even for a lifetime, or in some cases. So there are different types of trauma. There's the physical trauma, whereby something happened, or you were beaten physically, or an accident, or you witnessed an accident, and then it traumatized you even physically. There is also the sexual trauma, whereby you are sodomized or raped as an individual, and then it affects you now, even how you relate with people, even of the opposite sex or of the same sex. And then we also have verbal trauma, whereby words were spoken to you and they went into your mind and they formed your identity, and you're no longer able to be the same again. Or things were said of fear, words came and they brought in the spirit of fear, and from that day on your life has not been the same. You've been traumatized. We also have the emotional trauma, whereby maybe you lost your parents, you lost a loved one, divorce, so now your emotions have not been the same again. And so these are just the various types of traumas that we have in the world right now. And then when trauma, let's say a child is going through rape, or when someone is going through a trauma or an abuse over an elongated period of time, it now becomes complex PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress syndrome, whereby you have been traumatized so much the brain has stored the trauma into various components, so that now that is when you sleep, when you're awake, it still runs your life, it runs your mind. That's complex PTSD. The memories are now stuck in the limbic system, and so now complex PTSD needs a lot of healing, inner healing, by going for counseling and also just prayer and being able to reassure back. Complex PTSD takes time to heal because it also took time for it to develop. So we're going to talk about signs of repressed trauma in an adult. What are the signs that you would be having to show that you carry trauma? Or what are these things that you manifest in your life that shows you carry trauma? Number one, the flight or flight mode, whereby you are always, have you ever seen people who are walking but they're always looking at their back? They are fearful even when there's nothing to cause them to fear. You're always in agitated, or on the edge. You're always on the edge, and it's easy for you to react. You're very reactive. It means you're on a fight or a flight mode. So anything for you, it can happen. You can easily get into fights with people. Why? Because you're still carrying trauma. There's also chronic fatigue, where you're always tired. No matter how many hours of sleep you've had in a particular night, you always wake up tired. You always wake up feeling depressed. You always wake up feeling emotionally disturbed. That is also part of chronic fatigue, where you're tired always. That one is chronic pain or headaches, whereby you're always having pains on your back, you're always having headaches. That is sign that you're still carrying trauma. You also have depression, chronic depression, whereby you're on and off. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're so depressed don't feel like waking up, you don't feel like talking to people. You're carrying trauma. There's also the eating disorders, whereby you have bulimia, or you also have different forms of eating disorders. So these disorders make you feel pain, make you can't eat properly like other people, or sometimes you have abdominal pains also. You also have suicide thoughts. If you have suicide thoughts coming or recurring into your life all the time, that means you're also carrying trauma. There's something deep within you that is causing you to feel or to act in such a way. And then your super arousal of emotions. That's another point, where your emotions are easily aroused. Your anger is easily aroused. or you're too sensitive. People have to walk on eggshells around you. That's also another sign of trauma. And then there's also complex PTSD, which you have talked about before. You're also having trauma. And then there's also self-harm, where people cut themselves. The reason why people cut or want to harm themselves is they want to take their minds off the trauma or whatever it is that is paining them to now to the physical. So that's why they are self-harming. And then also we have substance abuse. People are always drinking. You find someone just after work, they just want to drink, or they are drinking the whole time. That could also be a sign that you're carrying trauma. Also, difficulty in relating to other people. When you're carrying trauma, it's now people maybe have to walk on eggshells, or people don't know how to relate with you because you are carrying a lot of trauma in your life. Also, you have difficulty relating to other people. Like I said before, sorry. So you can't even go to a function without you quarreling, or sometimes you just find yourself in fights. That is part of trauma. There's also lack of self-care. When you're carrying too much trauma, sometimes you don't feel like making yourself up, you don't feel like washing yourself up, dressing up well. It's like you have a form of depression in you. Trauma can also be inherited or passed on as culture. Sometimes what people pass on as culture, it could be also part of trauma. And what are the signs that you have inherited trauma? Now, our society has inherited trauma. In the world today, right now, people are taking fashion or fads without thinking. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this kind of an activity? Why do I like this? Because it could be just taking off someone's trauma that they have introduced as fashion. So, number one, broken relationships. When you have a lot of broken relationships in a society, it means that that society has trauma that has been passed on through generations or even as culture. Number two, disconnected society, whereby you find the society, there is no unity in society. There are a lot of fragmentation in societies, and it starts in families, because every family lineage that has trauma, there will not be unity. Because there'll be a lot of infighting, there'll be a lot of fears. People are relating from a base of fear, a lot of distrust. So all that is because of trauma. And then there's also violence, where people are killing and ganging each other down, like mostly in the African American society. You find that most people are traumatized. Why? Because you find the father figure is not there. The society is broken. So what ends up happening as a byproduct? Violence takes over. There's also substance abuse, where you find a society, there's a lot of drug use, there's a lot of taking of alcohol, there's a lot of just substance abuse to try and numb the pain. That means a society is broken and they have inherited a lot of trauma. There's also mental illness. When you see a lot of prevalence on mental illnesses, it could be that these people are also carrying trauma. Trauma can also come in form of low self-esteem, where people are trying to amass wealth or amass things to make themselves to feel good about themselves. That without these things, you don't feel good about yourself. And then there's also depression, whereby you are depressed. You're depressed all the time. Most of the time, you feel like you can't wake up to go out and face the world. That's also part of the trauma that you are carrying. So I hope as you're listening to this, if you are carrying inherited trauma, what can you do? You can go to a counselor, you can pray about it, join a support group. And also, because emotional wounds are not like physical wounds where you apply antiseptic on them. Emotional wounds have to be dealt with by talking. You have to talk about it, you have to bring it out, you have to be aware that you're carrying trauma. You see, the saddest thing that can ever happen to an individual is when you are suffering from something that you don't know inside of you. So that way, you will continue going around in circles, suffering from one level to another, because you're carrying trauma, you're carrying pain inside of you, and you need to release this pain. So one of the ways to heal is talking. Talk to a counselor. Accept. When you're in denial of something, especially anything to do with your emotions, when you're in denial, the more the pain, the more the trauma, the more, the agony. So accept that you have this trauma. Accept that you need help so that you can be able to go now to the counselor and start the journey of healing. There are also support groups whereby all of you, when you meet, you've gone through a similar, traumatic experience, maybe if it's rape. And there are many, organizations that take care of different traumatic experience. Some rape, others many, just many. So you can have a support group who you support each other, you feel each other, you understand each other, because the worst thing of going through trauma or pain in your life is when no one can be able to understand you. And you see, the more you carry this trauma, the more it destroys your relationships, it destroys your workplace, it destroys you at home, it destroys your children, your relationship, even how to relate with your children. So I would advocate, if you're watching this video and you've seen these signs in you, and you feel like you've even hit more than one, it's time for you now to go and deal with that trauma. The next episode, we are going to deal with how the trauma affects the brain. And with this information, I pray that someone out there is being helped. Someone out there starting to heal, because the aim of this program is to heal and to restore back. Thank you again for watching. You're free to like, you're free to subscribe, you're free to comment, and even share with different people whose this information can be relevant to. Thank you.